Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan John joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. Warm and humid day across the Ohio Valley, no doubt about it. And we're going to be tracking now not only some more warm and humid conditions going into the weekend, but more showers and thunderstorms are likely ahead. So thanks so much for tuning into this edition of Nate at 8. Again, coming up, some of the topics we're going to be covering: rain chances. They pick up into your Wednesday. Severe thunderstorms, flooding. Unfortunately, it's possible. So we'll break down the potential impacts coming our way, what to watch for, and then more storms into the weekend. So while, yes, rain chances pick up Wednesday, we're going to be tracking more rain chances as we go into the weekend as well. So a lot to dive into for this edition of Nate at 8. Without further ado, let's jump into things. And starting off with the warmth and the humidity. Well, temperatures still into the 80s. Those highs today topping off well into the 80s. And you factor that in with the humidity, and it felt into the 90s across the area for today. Those dew points still close to that 70-degree mark on that range of uncomfortable to unbearable. And that's exactly the range we'll likely remain in as we go throughout this week, as well as this weekend. As you can see, unfortunately, not getting to the green or the blue of pleasant, refreshing air anytime soon. I know a lot of this just unbearable to uncomfortable humidity, unfortunately, I think carries over into next week as well. So that's really the one constant variable, is that the humidity is really not lowering much at all. But what will likely lower some are the temperatures. We'll see those highs still likely towards the mid 80s the next couple of days. But, even with respect to today, I think it's possible to trend a little cooler the next couple of days, and anticipated to be cooler than for Friday and the weekend, where highs are back lower 80s. Quite possibly even holding in the 70s on Friday, to the point where we're getting back below normal for our high temperatures. But again, keep in mind, the temperature's lower, but the humidity does not, right? So those 70s that we could hold into Friday, it's still just a unpleasant, muggy 70s, not a cool, comfortable 70s. And when you factor in that humidity with our temperatures, it's going to still feel warmer. So their temperatures, topping off just in the 80s, it's going to feel well in the 80s and as we get into Saturday and Sunday. Now, as temperatures do fall in the 70s, the heat index starts to become less of a factor. So it is possible, despite being humid, if our highs can hold in the upper 70s Friday, that the heat index can actually be more on par with the temperature. But outside of that, if we still climb into the 80s into these afternoon hours, it's still feeling likely a handful of degrees warmer than the actual air temperature. So it'll feel mid-upper 80s Saturday and Sunday, despite highs likely in the lower 80s, and still feeling likely near, if not into the 90s over the next couple of days, with highs more around the mid, maybe upper 80s, possibly sneaking in as we extend here over the next couple of days. So, certainly going to be anticipating some certainly still warm and, again, humid weather ahead. Even despite temperatures lowering a bit, still just going to be uncomfortable in general as we do look ahead. So, catching on some comments, thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. Joe, good evening to you. Thank you for tuning in. Patrick as well from Weirton, thank you for tuning in. And also saying good evening. Today, a very miserable day, ready for a nice steady cool down. The smuggy weather can go away anytime soon. I'm with you there, Austin. Unfortunately, no relief is in sight. Wish I could say different. I'm certainly rooting for a more cool, comfortable day, but unfortunately not one is in sight. Just remaining, again, warm for a lot of this stretch and just unbearably humid for a lot of it as well. Unfortunately, that is our future. And during this time, for a lot of these days, likely contending with some showers and thunderstorms as well. Now, of course, the exception really being today, as we stayed mainly dry, just some stray showers, but most of us dealing with dry conditions throughout the day. The bigger story, just the warmth and the humidity, right? And that will be the case likely overnight, that dry conditions hold, but it's warm and muggy. Those only fall into the lower 70s going into tomorrow morning. Now, while the emphasis into the weekend for these daily rain chances will be in the afternoon and evening, I do think it's possible to spot that shower in the morning. It's just that coverage is likely more isolated, and Futurecast is illustrating this. So notice as we do extend throughout the morning, there's that potential for more of an isolated shower to start off the day tomorrow. It is possible, maybe a rumble of thunder. I think coverage is still hit or miss for the beginning of Wednesday. And then it further picks up with more scattered showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. The emphasis in these days ahead, when we start to break down the rain chances, will certainly remain in the afternoon and evening. But that being said, it does look like for these days going into the weekend that we can have something more isolated in place in the morning, but we also can see some showers and thunderstorms carry over cover for at least the first half of these nights. So it's not that we're completely drying up as the sun sets, just like what Futurecast is showing. At least leading up closer to midnight, we can still have some showers and thunderstorms around into early tomorrow night. And then a lot of that activity, yes, likely does taper off into Thursday morning. And then you pick back up in coverage. Again, maybe something more isolated in the morning and then more scattered showers and thunderstorms into the afternoon. And again, this just starts an unsettled stretch of weather then that we're going to be tracking on a daily, that potential for at least a few showers and thunderstorms. Friday does look like the emphasis can be more south of I-70, dealing with the scattered showers and thunderstorms. And then Saturday, a few across the region, then further picking up in coverage on Sunday. So, it can become a little more hit and miss, possibly Friday and Saturday. But even then, some of us still likely going to be picking up a round of rain during that 2-day stretch. So, in general, just going to be this unsettled pattern. Yes, the emphasis for these days, a lot of it is in the afternoon and evening. But that being said, right, we still could spot something more isolated in the morning, and we can still spot some showers and thunderstorms, at least for the first half of these nights. So this is an unsettled stretch of weather that we have coming our way, and it's a good time to keep weather aware because, unfortunately, on this daily basis of showers and thunderstorms, we run the potential for impacts on a daily basis as well. Yes, even the days when coverage can be lower Friday and Saturday, the potential for impacts is still there. I think really it's a daily occurrence from Wednesday through Sunday that we can deal with impacts. So what impacts we're going to be watching for going through the weekend? Well, number one, I think could end up being a little higher risk than even the second, is fortunately the potential for flash flooding. Now, that being said, it does likely stay more localized, right, than dealing with any widespread flooding in the area. But that localized flash flooding is possible. So again, we're dealing with some heavy downpours within showers, and we're dealing with torrential downpours within thunderstorms. A lot of moisture present in the atmosphere for the showers and thunderstorms to tap into, and you get some very high rainfall rates. And the issue, of course, dealing with that shower thunderstorm that develops and lingers over the same location, or any training of showers and thunderstorms over the same location, presents that flash flooding risk on a daily occurrence as we go through the weekend. So that is, I think, the number one thing to watch for. And of course, download the Severe Weather T9 mobile app. It gives you a heads up when rain's heading your way. It also gives you a heads up when you're dealing with lightning near your location. And of course, will alert you with any warnings issued. NOAA Weather Radio, of course, will also go off if you have one, or if you can get one. If a warning's issued for your location, maybe if you don't have the best cell phone reception or internet, then maybe you're able to get the frequency on a weather radio to alert you of any warnings issued for your location. But certainly have multiple ways to get warnings as we go through the weekend. Again, the emphasis for these impacts will be in the afternoon and evening. Does stay likely more isolated, but nonetheless, the potential is there for, unfortunately, dealing with flash flooding. Now, second, that potential for severe weather. Yes, we can deal with some strong to severe thunderstorms in the afternoon, evening hours. Does likely stay more isolated than anything widespread, and damaging winds would likely remain the primary concern. So it does look like less of a tornado risk and more so of just dealing with the potential for some damaging winds, and even less so of a large hail risk as well. It's likely the two impacts that we're going to be watching more closely going through the weekend on the daily occurrence is more of a flash flooding concern and high wind concern. So if we're dealing with any thunderstorms maturing to the point of becoming severe, the potential is there that storm could produce some damaging winds. And then, of course, in addition to that, with torrential downpours within thunderstorms in general, that potential for flash flooding, if those storms are lingering over the same location for a long period of time, then we run that potential for dealing with flash flooding on more of a local scale. So both those two impacts, what to really watch for. And of course, something we'll closely monitor on the daily occurrence as we go through the weekend, through the afternoon and evening hours. Of course, we'll begin to give you the latest coming up, every evening, News 9 live at 5, from 5 to 6:30 to give you the latest. And then, of course, if you can tune in on air, you could join me for that edition of Nate at 8, or follow my social media, Nathan Shutt News 9, WTOV9. You'll be able to find me on X or Twitter, formerly Twitter, as well as Facebook. A lot of you are already tuning in on Facebook. You can catch me on Facebook, or if you're joining on YouTube, maybe don't have Facebook but have X, then you can catch me there as well. I'll be posting, of course, updates even throughout the afternoon and evening hours. But in general, just want to keep weather aware during this stretch as we go through the weekend. Yes, both will likely remain more isolated in terms of coverage than anything widespread, but we do run the risk for flash flooding and a severe thunderstorm just on a daily occurrence with these scattered showers and thunderstorms almost on the daily occurrence as well, right? Coverage can decrease a little bit Friday into Saturday, but the potential is still there for at least some showers and thunderstorms into Friday and Saturday as well. And even looking ahead into next week, unfortunately, it does look like a lot of the same. I just unfortunately don't see much of an end to this more unsettled pattern, this humid pattern, this warm pattern. We're really hoping at this point to get that, nice prolonged dry stretch of weather. We haven't strung too many dry days together, at least a few dry days at times, but haven't had a real prolonged dry stretch. And we've been dealing with overall pretty unsettled weather pattern and certainly a humid one here going past 3 weeks. And really at this point, this week, we're going to be approaching a month straight of dealing with high humidity and dealing with an unsettled pattern for a lot of that stretch, and in general, a lot of warm temperatures. Haven't had, a lot of 90s. We haven't strung together a lot of 90s, but we've certainly had some warm days, a lot of 80s, what we've been dealing with. But the humidity has been more excessive than the temperatures, that's for sure. But, you can see that when you are dealing with that higher humidity, it can be a limiting factor, not only to our overnight lows, which we talk a lot about, right? And you'll notice those overnight lows, mid-upper 60s, 70s, nothing into the lower 60s, right? Nothing in the 50s. That would be evidence of dealing with more cool or more comfortable conditions at night. And, nothing of that sort. The coolest low, maybe we'll dip to around the mid 60s. That's still on the mild muggy side, but a little bit cooler going into the weekend, Saturday morning. But that would be it, really just getting back to more of a seasonable low at that point. But for a lot of the stretch, these dew points, these, humid dew points closer to 70 degrees can be the limiting factor to how much lows drop. It also can be, when you're dealing with more moisture present in the atmosphere, it can be a limiting factor to how much we warm in the afternoon as well. So you can see that it's harder to reach into the 90s when you are dealing with some fairly humid conditions as well in the afternoon. It can hinder how much we'll see those temperatures climb as well. But of course, when you factor in the humidity with highs in the mid 80s, it's still feeling closer to, if not into the 90s at that point. So still, regardless, with the heat index, it still feels like it's that warm, even if the temperatures aren't climbing to that extent. Good evening there, Suzanne. Thank you for tuning into this edition of Nate at 8. Patrick, can I do landscaping tomorrow morning? Do we have storms in the morning? Likely okay, Patrick. Maybe something more isolated, but likely not too much coverage, and at least to start the day before it picks up in the afternoon. And I would watch even early afternoon. Potentially there, Patrick. So start to watch towards midday, early afternoon hours. We can start to see that coverage of the showers and thunderstorms picking up at that point. Thank you for doing everything you do. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. That's very kind words. Hopefully the rain will be extremely heavy. And unfortunately, I think anything that falls will be, Austin. I think, really what these showers and thunderstorms that we do see, the showers themselves likely producing heavy downpours, and then you get the real torrential downpours. There's even higher rainfall rates within any thunderstorms. So, even within showers, I think we're set for some heavy downpours, unfortunately, for the days ahead going through the weekend. Lola, good evening. Thank you for tuning in. Has this been the longest stretch of muggy weather, Austin asked? And yes, I do think we're setting up. And without even really diving into the dew points, when it comes to climate statistics, there's some records. It's harder to dig up when you're talking about dew points, but it's easier when you're talking about overnight lows. And it's, again, they often coincide, especially this time of the year, when you're dealing with lows into the 60s and 70s. That often coincides with some humid conditions, right? So it's easier to look back climate records of those lows in 60 plus, and more specific to the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Since the 21st of June, it's been 63 plus. 63 has been the coolest low we've had, and we're likely not dipping back to that point here near term over the next week and quite possibly the next 10 days. So we're going to be looking likely in terms of a stretch of low 63 plus for the Wheeling area. I think we could be setting a new record in terms of what's on record for lows 63 plus. I think it's possible. We'll be close to it into Saturday morning, but forecast is to stay just above above it. I don't think we're going to be reaching below 63 degrees. That being said, so I think, we're right now sitting into the top 5, and I think we can sneak even into that first place, which is a month long. And I think we can get that a month straight of dealing with lows 63 plus. And again, that would be the longest tying it, but I think we can even surpass that, the longest stretch of low 63 plus on record for the Wheeling area. And also, Wheeling climate data is okay. There's some gaps. It's not perfect. The best climate data we have in our region is Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh has incredible climate data that's complete since the late 1800s. So a long period of good climate data for the Pittsburgh area. That's the best climate data we have in our region. And even if you look at what Pittsburgh and the climate data for Pittsburgh, again, consistent since the late 1800s, their coolest low at the Pittsburgh International Airport during this stretch, same stretch we were talking about since the 21st, their coolest low has been 64 degrees. And, same story as what we're going to be dealing with here at home. I think there's a potential that they maybe dip to 64, but, most likely than not dip to that or stay above it. So I think their stretch can continue as well during this time period. And that being said, even with much more complete and really good climate data out of Pittsburgh, I still think there's a potential even for that climate site for Pittsburgh area that even since the late 1800s, that we can end up with the longest stretch in Pittsburgh as well, dating back to that time period. So with lows, a stretch of lows 64 plus, a 64 plus. I think that's a potential there, easily top 3, but if not the top record. I think it's possible. So take that into consideration. We're talking since the late 1800s. So the longest stretch here of these really, I'd say mild, but really almost warm and muggy nights. And again, that's good evidence then also coinciding with the humidity as well. Just not relief from that humidity. And this could be the longest stretch with no relief from that humidity, dating back since the late 1800s for our area. Wow. Yeah, it could be that significant. It could be that significant. And, here later on into the week, when we start to approach those records, I'll dive more into them. But I have started to do some digging on that because it's, I do think there's a lot of significance into how humid this stretch has been, how warm these nights have been. And that's some of the preliminary, data that I've dug into, looking at not only the Wheeling area, but I was also curious, with very great climate data for how Pittsburgh's stacking up as well. Because really, we're similar conditions really when it's come to these temperatures with respect to the Pittsburgh area. So it was interesting. Yeah, interesting to note. So, but yeah, certainly continue to dive into that. And as we approach those records, and if not surpass them, certainly we'll be mentioning that again. I'm mentioning that again coming up as we do look ahead during this just humid stretch of weather. Unfortunately, again, just no relief in sight. Just none. Very little. I mean, a little less humid, I think, during that Friday night to Saturday, but still on the muggy side, right? It's not comfortable. We're not in the 50s. It's not real cool, comfortable night. Unfortunately, it's just not ahead. And, I know a lot of area farmers, still waiting out on that long dry stretch, right? And hopefully we can get into that. Hopefully we can. Certainly hoping we can get into a longer period of dry weather, consistent dry weather. Hopefully we can string together at least a handful of days with no chance of precipitation. I know a lot of these area farmers still waiting to get out and bale that hay, and it's just been too wet, right? Unfortunately, just been too wet. Unfortunately, just looks to continue to be a lot of the same that we've dealt with as of recent during this. Now, typically, this time of the year, when you get the long dry stretch, you typically get some hot weather too, right? But I think at this point, at least we'd take it if we can get some dry conditions, and hopefully, it may be hot, but it'd be nice to string together some dry days during this as well. And thankfully, at that point would start to lower that risk for any impacts with flooding or severe weather, although, certainly some heat safety concerns, but it'd be good to lower that risk of dealing with some flooding and severe weather concerns, which unfortunately, again, we have on a daily basis if you're just now tuning in going through the weekend. Now, both likely stay more isolated, right, than any widespread flooding or widespread severe weather event. But locally or isolated, yes, flash flooding, strong severe thunderstorm, it can occur on a daily basis as we go through the weekend. Damaging winds would be the primary concern. If we see that thunderstorm become severe, it can produce some high winds. That's what we're primarily concerned about. And heavy downpours within even showers. Thunderstorms, they're producing those torrential downpours. Some very high rainfall rates are likely during this stretch through the weekend. A lot of moisture for these showers and thunderstorms to tap into, unfortunately. So we will certainly be keeping a close eye on conditions as we do extend through the weekend and continuing to monitor the showers and thunderstorms that do develop. And of course, you can catch the latest coming up there for going into these evenings. News 9 live at 5, right? 5 to 6:30. For News 9 live at 5, News 9 at 6, then again from 6 to 6:30. And I'll continue to give you the latest on, continuing to monitor, give you a heads up on what areas, flooding may start to occur shortly, or what, thunderstorms to keep an eye on for that potential for not only flooding, but maybe, it's on the stronger side and becoming possibly severe. It's producing some gusty winds, right? Try to give you that heads up on areas to watch where the highest concern is. And they'll give you those updates during News 9 live at 5. From 5 to 6:30. And if you can't tune in, of course, as well, there's Nathan Shutt News 9 on Facebook. And then on X, InShut WTOV. Also try to post those updates as much as I can as well on any areas of concern to watch on my social media as well. So, if you can't tune in, then certainly, stay posted to social media during the time. We'll keep you updated. And then, of course, for the Nate at 8, right? We'll be live streaming that next edition of Nate at 8 to give you the latest on what we're currently dealing with and what areas to watch for at that time as well. So try to keep you guys updated going throughout the stretch. And even outside of that, of course, download the Severe Weather T9 mobile app. Get that heads up when rain's heading your way or when lightning's detected near you. And then, of course, always a good way to get that warning if one's issued for your area as well. Have multiple ways to get that warning. If mobile phone, weather radio, two great options. Radio in general, right? Tune into a local radio station to give that audible warning if one's issued by the National Weather Service office. Television, right? Tune in News 9 live at 5, 6. Coming up, News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. I have multiple ways to get the warning and stay updated going, especially throughout these afternoon and evenings as we go through the weekend. As yes, on a daily basis, flash flooding, a strong severe thunderstorm, they're both possible. Both likely more isolated, but they are both possible during this stretch. Thanks so much for tuning in. You could definitely catch me coming up on News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11, and for the next edition of Nate at 8 as well, right? Mm-hmm. Until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Hopefully, you can try to stay cool. It's been hard during the stretch, hasn't it? It's been hard to cool off. This heat, humidity has just been relentless. Hopefully, there's an end in sight sometime coming up soon. Hopefully, maybe with the tail end of this month or into August, hopefully we could see a flip in the pattern and finally start to get at least some, cooler, comfortable days sprinkled in. Hopefully, right? We'll hold on to the hope. That's for sure. But, until then, have a great night. I'll see you on the next edition of Nate at 8.